The short answer section of the AP test may appear at first to be pretty overwhelming. You have just 40 minutes. You must respond to 3 questions. 2 of the questions will require you to interpret a reading, picture, or graph. You have to answer 3 questions for each of the short answers. And you have to be concise since you have a limited space to provide your explanations. So, is there any good news? Yes. The short answer section is meant to test you on your understanding of the historical skills. So you don't have to provide elaborate answers. You just need to have clear, concise, and coherent argumentative skills. How do you do this? Well, that's what this tutorial is going to help you to build. So first, let's go over what to expect for the short answer section. There are going to be 4 questions. You are required to answer 3 out of the 4. The first question will be a passage or passages from a secondary source, a historian's interpretation. This is required to answer. The second will be a reading, graph, or picture from a primary source. This is also required to answer. The third and fourth will be prompts with no stimulus. You will choose from one of these to answer. Each question will typically have 3 parts to it. There will be an A, B, and C. You will be provided with a box to answer the questions. I would suggest labeling each answer, A, B, or C. Make sure that you stay inside the box. Never, ever write outside of the box. Okay, now to the actual writing. One of the key skills to develop in an AP class, or even just in your life in general, is the ability to provide a good argument. So many people think that they're providing a well-structured argument, but all too often people provide opinions that are not well explained. A good argument must have 3 parts to it. First, you have to have a specific claim that states a clear and specific position. Second, you need support, whether you are using concrete examples or just plain old reasons. Third, you need to have a statement of significance that connects your argument back to the prompt or the position you originally took. When you read over a passage, use the same skills you would use for the multiple choice stimulus sections. First, scan the prompts for the historical thinking skills. Second, look at the source to determine the background to the author and the time period. Third, read the passage for the gist or the overall idea of the reading. Now, go to the prompts and questions. Answer each prompt by looking for the following elements: historical thinking skill, content, significance, and impact of the prompt or question. The historical thinking skill will ask you to address cause and effect, or change in continuity, or comparison and contrast, or contextualization, or point of view. Then look for the actual historical content of the passage. Finally, look to see what the impacts of the questions, social, political, religious, ideological, technological, economic, are. Keep each answer to about 2 to 3 sentences at the most. Be brief, concise, and provide the specific argument that the prompt question is asking for you to do. So what is the rubric for answering short answers? Well, good news and bad news. First, the bad news. There is no rubric. But here's the good news. Each answer is graded on whether or not you hit the elements that were stated before. So if your answer provides the historical thinking skill, historical content, and impact to the question, you get a point. If you do this for A, B, and C, you get 3 points. So let's take a look at an example of how you want to write up something like this for the short answer section. So we're going to come back to that example that we had earlier from a historian. So this is a secondary source. It's about the Comanche Empire, and it was written in 2008. So if we go to the first question, question A, it says, identify one way in which the author challenges commonly held assumptions about the Americas in the age of European colonialism. Okay, so remember what we want to look for here. What's the historical thinking skill? In this case, it's something we call argumentation. It's the idea of what's the claim, what's being used to support or dispute the claim. We also have here content. The content here is about a nomadic group that becomes an empire, the Comanche. And we also have an impact here, and that's how did we deal with political state building or colonialism. So if we look at the overall gist of this particular secondary source, what the argument is that nomadic tribes were able to stall empires that were building at the time period. They did this, but over time, in order to become politically stable and powerful, they too would have to become empires themselves. So if we take a look at the answer to A possible answer would look like the following. The author argues that a nomadic group can stall or even stop imperialism by taking over many of the same practices as the empire state they are fighting. So here we give a brief summary of what this historian is arguing, what's the overall gist of the article. However, the author points out that this will change that group into their own empire state. And then finally, this challenges the argument that nomadic people are powerless against strong political states. Notice this last sentence here is a disputing of the typical argument that's given that nomadic tribes could not stand up to stable, well-organized governments. So here we have a clear answer that deals with the historical thinking skill, historical argumentation, deals with the content, the nomadic tribes and empires, and then talks about the impact. And the impact here is political organization. So here's the great news about the short answer section. Unlike the multiple choice section, you don't have to only select the answer that the test makers thought was best. And unlike the long essay, you don't have to provide an extended explanation. If you can practice providing the historical thinking skill with brief examples and a clear but brief explanation, you are going to pick up points on the national test.